Hi all, just wanted to go over a few of our quiz questions for this week, for this past week. The one thing that you'll notice about these, and I may adjust it, I'm not sure, but right now we'll talk about some questions. Not everyone gets the same questions. They come from a pool of questions that I've added. So it kind of mixes up. It's kind of an option for us to avoid cheating and those kinds of things in our classes, which unfortunately we've had to deal with. So not everyone will have these questions, and I'm not going to go over every question that somebody got wrong on the test or on the quiz. Generally, people did really well, but so if you have a question about one of the others, I'm going to go over five. If you have a question about one of the others, please just drop me a note, give me a call, something like that. I'm happy to go over it. So the first question was having influence in policy markets depends upon possession of combinations of, and there were several answers. A, B, and C were legitimate and reward power, reward and coercive power, expert and referent power, and and then D was all the above. So the answer was all the above. There's also an answer that was only A and C. But it was all of the above. And in our text, it's on page 76. It talks about legitimate, the type of power that can help to shape these markets, policy markets, or drive legislative activity. Those types of things are legitimate power, reward, coercive, expert, and referent. So all of those were represented in those answers. So our answer to that one was all of the above. Next question down. A Senate subcommittee accepts a bill requiring a national prescription drug monitoring program. What is an possible immediate next step for the bill in its path to become legislation? So there were several answers. I won't read them all. The correct answer was both B and D. That was answer E. So B and D were both accurate. And I think what maybe slipped some people up on this was the word subcommittee. So it talked about a Senate subcommittee requiring, kind of approving and allowing this particular bill to push forward. So what happens when a bill is approved in a subcommittee? It'll move to the full committee. So that is really there's really only two things that could happen to this bill at this point. The subcommittee can review it and potentially call hearings, but if they've accepted it and they're looking to move it forward, they're going to send it to the full committee to review, potentially call hearings, whatnot. So the two answers that were correct were the bill proceeds to the full committee, which can approve, amend, or reject it, or the full committee calls for a hearing to investigate the merits and flaws of the bill. So those are the two options, because at this point, as the question said, let me go back and look at it again, they have accepted a bill. So that means the subcommittee's done with it, they're ready to deal with it, so it'll go to the full committee, be reviewed, and then it would either they would review it, potentially pass it, push it forward, or they may call hearings on it themselves. So that was the answer there. The correct answer was B or D. Next question. What portion of the spending on health in the United States is sourced from government/public funds? So our correct answer there was about 50%. It does talk about that right at the start of the book, about how about half. There's quite a few different sections here in the beginning where they talk about how much of gross domestic product, around 17-18% gross domestic product is spent on healthcare. But the one thing that they do say is that about half of that spending comes from federal, state, and local governments. So a lot of the spending on healthcare does come from the government sector. Just think Medicare, Medicaid, and other government-funded programs, funds for government employees, funds for military, funds for folks in health exchanges, because those are subsidized in some instances. So a lot of the funding for healthcare does come from the government, one government or another. Next question. The health system in any country can be defined fully as the government's total effort in pursuit of health for the citizenry. So this was a true-false question, And the answer in this case was false. The textbook does talk about the health system and how health system in any country is defined as the total national effort put toward healthcare in what healthcare and overall health of the population. However, as is noted and as we know from our previous studies, previous discussions, etc., it is in our country a public and private effort. So as we know from just that last question I went over, about half of the funding comes from the government. Well, where does the other half come from? The private sector. So it is not just a government's effort for pursuit of health, especially not in the United States. In some countries, it could be, but with regard to what we're talking about is, what is the definition, as it says in the text, defined as the total national effort undertaken in the private and public sectors. So there's always going to be private, some kind of private involvement in healthcare overall. Last question. The Association of Academic Health Centers recommends the nation have an integrated national health workforce policy, including and there are several answers: National Health Workforce Planning Body, investment in workforce research, construction of new medical and nursing schools, and then there was an A and a B, and then an A, B, and C. So our correct answer was A and B. This again comes from our textbook, where it talks to us about recommendations for an integrated national health workforce. And in order to do that, there needs to be some work that comes from that. So that planning body, National Health Workforce Planning Body, some overall investment in workforce research. We know that there are nursing shortages. We know that there are primary care physician shortages. And then we just throw a bunch of things at it to see what can work. That's not terribly effective. As we've seen, we've had a nursing shortage for an incredible number of years. Some towns have no issue getting nurses. Some towns have a great deal of issue getting a huge problem finding nurses for their workforce. So we need to have more of an integrated effort to resolve these resolve this problem. There's also it's not one of our answers, but it talks about harmonization in public and private standards, requirements, and prevailing practices across jurisdictions. So again, that kind of comes back around to that integrated workforce plan, so that for example, if there's we're building new nursing schools and throwing a ton of money at that in the Pittsburgh area, yet maybe we're finding that the number of nurses are not as needed, or we're finding that those that are going into nursing school are going for the purpose of working specifically only in primary care nursing, so it's not helping our long-term care nursing shortage. Maybe they're looking to become researchers or educators, so that's not helping our nursing shortage, although there is a nursing educator shortage as well. But so it's what's important is that we start to kind of integrate across jurisdictions. What is acceptable for nursing staffing in upstate New York may not be acceptable for nursing staffing here in Pittsburgh. Even salaries, and looking at workforce norms, a salary for a registered nurse in the small town I came from in upstate New York was easily $10 an hour more than it is here, and there was certainly no nursing shortage where I came from. So it's just more value placed on that position. So it's just an interesting dichotomy. So we need to have a more of a an integrated effort across all jurisdictions to kind of figure this out. So hopefully this info is helpful. If, again, like I said, if you do have questions on any of the other quiz questions, please email me, drop me a message via text, give me a call, and I'm happy to address those. So have a great week. Thanks.